application, but you will see here additional information and resources. And I mentioned to you between our website and Googling other things, and we'll talk about that later, you truly should have the majority of what you need to complete your applications right here on the website. Again, once you're getting into the new program, you see some resources here in terms of syllabi, curriculum resources, key for my CDL schools, CDL. So you definitely want to make sure that you're fully utilizing this website to your advantage. So again, you see these are just links. I'm just going to click on it. And you can see my application just pops up down here at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and just have this open for now. And I'm going to go back in. And now we have to talk about the nasty part, the costs. So you've already submitted. You're here today because you submitted and confirmed received of your fee for today's seminar. The next fees that you will be looking at are the $7,500 for the new school application. Please understand that does include one new program. So you're getting 2 applications for the $7,500. As a new school, you will also have a site visit of your school. We need to come out, see your facility. We need to make sure that, it exists. And I know that sounds funny, but we need to make sure this school physically exists, that it is safe, that there's enough space, and we need to take a look at the lay of the land. So for those of you, and really I want to say the majority, but I think today's majority might be different. It is $7,500 plus $750. So that's $8,250. If you're going to want to submit 2 programs, then it's going to be the $75, the $750, and $1,400. Your fee here includes 1 new school application and 1 new program application. Let's say hypothetically you want to add a second new program. So that is now 3 applications. So there's an additional $1,400. You cannot submit more than 3 new programs at once. I just had my new school that was deferred. They did 3 new programs right out the gate. So there were 4 total applications to review. They're actually fully online, so they did not have a site visit. I don't think that's applicable to anybody just by the nature of what I saw with registration forms. But if your school was going to run 100% online, this $750 does not apply to you, but I believe for most and all that it will. If part of your curriculum is going to be taught at a different location, sorry CDL guys, this is your property may only allow you to do the classroom portion, but you have to go do your driving range somewhere else. We need to not only see your classroom portion, but we will also need to see your driving range. So you would have actually 2 site visit fees. So 1 program, $7,500, site visit for the main school, site visit for your remote property. Okay. Admissions representative, it's there. I'm ignoring it because we have an entire tab dedicated to it, and it's likely not even relevant to you. So moving on. So again, we already saw these, some of the resources available on our website in that main area of the new school, new program applications under the applicant resources menu of our website. When you're completing the application, please, it is locked. Please don't try and break it. Seriously, please don't try and break it. I've had them come in with extra tabs built in, like they just randomly threw in like 2 or 3 tabs. I'm like, what are you doing? First of all, I don't know how they did it. Second of all, unfortunately, I sent it back and I'm like, look, I can't work with this, and you need to resubmit at the next deadline. So we've now just lost an entire 3 months. So they're locked for a reason, because as you see on the screen, there are some cells that will self-populate and auto-populate forward and, of course, calculate. So please don't try and break them. Complete all shaded boxes. Type in this space or embed a document. At the very, very end, like this is the last thing we do today, is I will show you how to embed a document. And in that PowerPoint, part 2 PowerPoint, are the step-by-step directions on how to do that in the event that you are not familiar. So anytime I say embed, just hang in there, especially if I'm not making any sense, I will show you how to do it. All right, so now this is one of those times where now I'm like, all right, let's jump into the application, because this is the very first tab. So you're going to see that I probably will hang out here slightly longer than what maybe I will into the PowerPoint, but I will try and jump back and forth at least enough to make sure I've captured all of the information. And speaking of, please know, it's understood. This is daunting. It's a lot. It's major info overload, and it's expected that you will have questions and your head will be swimming. I should have probably said that, along with keeping your, arms, hands, legs, and feet in at all times. All right, just again, first tab, always the instructions, always guidance, always reminders, anything in red, anything in bold, it's there for a reason. Yeah, some of the tabs are kind of long to read, but you should still at least read through them and make sure that you're understanding what the requirements are, what's expected, what should be there, etc., etc. This information is going to be key about the file name. You always, once you have clicked on it, you've opened it and launched it, you're just going to simply do a file save as and then put it wherever you want it to go on your system. Some schools will put it in like a Google Share or a OneDrive file share system, like a different whatever. However, because they have multiple people working on the application, that's fine. That's your prerogative. However you feel it's going to be best to complete the application. However, I do encourage you to have at least one person ensure that their job is to review each and every single tab to make sure that it's complete, and you're looking for spelling, you're looking for grammatical areas or errors, and so forth. You really want somebody to do an overall every tab check. Check off each of the following. It's a really extensive check-off list. Like, did you do this? And, did you do that? Reiteration of what the board decisions are, your right to know, end of instructions. This is going to be key. Keep scrolling every tab until you get to end of. Move on to the next tab. There is inevitably something lurking further down that you missed. And then it's just one more thing you got to do and revise before you can resubmit and go forward. This application, relevant, recent, updated as of 5/18/2021. We do have a new version coming out soon. I can't tell you what soon is. I wish I could tell you what soon is. I just looked at it last night. I know it's ready to go. It's just a matter of getting the go from the division chief to my coworker to have it put out there on the website. You're like, well, I wanted to start this tomorrow. Yeah, I know. Go ahead, start it. I mean, truly, there are very minor changes that's coming forward with the new version. So I'm not going to discourage you from starting tomorrow. Just kind of maybe keep an eye. And that's the other thing about our website. We are always updating. So don't save this form and then do it 6 months down the road for another program, because I just said to you we're doing a new one. So you always want to make sure that you are always going to our website and pulling the latest version down. All right, PDE 1003. So type of license, we already talked about this. You're going to seek in-state licensure because everybody has a physical presence. My school name. I usually do this with you guys, and I just kind of make it up along. So my school name, my address, my web address. I'm going to take a park here for a moment and tell you that's great to have a web address, because some of you are existing businesses. Completely understood and acceptable. What is not acceptable is that you are advertising coming soon, training in XYZ. Regulations will tell you that you cannot advertise your school until you are licensed. So, great to have a web address. Please make sure it does not promote, advertise, coming soon. Got to have it down. Got to take it down. Or make that part of it, that page of it, like page not found, whatever. Alternate school names, I don't know. So Mickey Mouse Club. And so moving on. Mailing address. The mailing address might be different than the school address. That is fine. There's nothing in the regulations that tell you they have to match. The only thing is, do not use P.O. boxes. They need to be actual physical mailing and school addresses. Phone number and the county. So we have a nice little drop down. What county are you located in? Okay. Who is your chief executive officer and who is your school director? They might not be the same person, and that is okay. What is the director's email? So this is going to be key. Your school director will be your primary point of contact for your board administrator. You might be filling out the application, but you might not be the person who will actually be the school director. So make sure that it is clearly understood on your part that the school director is who will be emailed the review letter. They will be emailed reminders about things that are due. They will be emailed to say, hey, you're in violation of this, fix this kind of concept. So the email address that they put here, or that is provided here, needs to be active and routinely checked and correct. So again, make sure spellings. I know I teased Carl before we got on because, his actual spelling of his name versus his email address. So make sure it is clear and it is routinely checked. Who is going to be the acting director or acting directors? Regulation will tell you that you must have a school director or acting director on campus at all hours of operation. Yes, that means if you're offering night classes, you need to have an appointed acting director. Now, it might be a lead instructor. That's fine. But they need to be appointed, they need to be recognized, approved, and that comes later on in the application where we'll talk about it. So you need to have at minimum one. If it is a husband and wife team as school director and acting director, I am not telling you cannot do that. What I am going to tell you to do is to have a second acting director appointed. And you're going to be like, why? And then I'm going to tell you, men don't take sickness very well. I know. See, I can't see all of you to see that you're giggling. So the wife usually takes off to nurse the husband. I know. I really don't hate men. I'm not one of those women. I'm just joking. However, in that instance of sickness, in that instance of vacation, and both the husband and wife go together, you need to have somebody else on campus that is in that acting director role. So again, husband and wife is fine. There's no issue there. It's a matter of ensuring that you have someone else appointed. And that is my child, although I wouldn't trust him to be an acting director to save my life, but that's all right. So I'm going to put 2 people in here. And Nicole is actually our division chief. So I'm your school director. It's not a bad decision. I'm just saying you don't want my son as an acting director, but Nicole's a good one as your division chief. Have you ever been authorized to operate in another state? Yes or no? It's very simple. However, if you are, please don't think and expect Pennsylvania to operate the same. Processes are totally different. Who's completing the form, affiliation, so on and so forth. Ooh, end of tab. Perfect. Move on, right? So at this point in the PowerPoint, I think I've covered everything with regard to the highlights there, just making sure everything is active. Your floor plan, we're coming out to see your building. We are coming in person. Many of our other visits are done virtually. New schools, new remote, no question, we are actually coming in person. So while we're going to see it in person, we also need to provide floor plans, square footage, et cetera, et cetera. And you're like, well, why is that? Well, that's because the board reviewer isn't coming in person. It's just me, or it's just Miss Felix. So it's not them. So they will look at the floor plans. They're going to look to make sure that it appears to have enough space. And they're going to take our word for it when we say, nope, there were no holes, there were no, leaky roofs, all the outlets were covered, the bathrooms worked, this, that, and the other thing. So they will take our word for it. So with regard to this tab in the application, it is quite plain Jane text boxes. The surety coverage required, I'll talk about that when we get to the surety tab, which is coming up very soon. So here, you're just giving us a copy of the floor plan. It can be hand-drawn. You don't need to have fancy blueprints. You can have a hand-drawn floor plan. Just make sure it includes the square footage. Your certificate of occupancy, not only do you have the right to be there, but that it has been, reviewed and it's safe and up to code and this, that, and the other. Your application might be void of this item because this item has proven to be quite a challenge for some schools to obtain, and it's understood and known. So you have a little red comment here, like you might not have it right away. That's fine. You cannot go past 3 weeks prior to the board meeting with not having it. If that's the case, your application could be complete. Everything else could be done. Except for this, your application cannot go forward. These are kind of those hard and fast. There's no breaking this. It's extremely rigid. If there is a different date for this, your board administrator will give you that timeline in your cure letter. Again, just check off that you understand that. Do you have a remote facility? If yes, tell us where it's at and provide us the floor plan, the certificate of occupancy, your agreement to be able to use that facility. And then we've given you the ability to do a second remote. Remember, main location, $750 visit. Remote facility, $750 for the visit. Ideally, once it's established that your applications are going on to the agenda, we will then schedule with you once we have this and we have all the information. Ideally, we could schedule both on the same day. So if I'm going to come out to Pittsburgh, I'm going to go ahead and grab your remote and your main location on the same day. Okay. The next tab is ownership. So this is where I don't want to say it causes the most heartburn, but it can and does for some. Just some additional information about the remote facility. Okay, I wanted to point it out. It's there, but we have talked about it. Oh, this is informational. I always forget this is in here until I scroll. If you noticed, the application doesn't even allow for you to talk about on the facility tab a branch location. It's because it's not applicable to you right now at the application phase. But it is an option to you 2 years down the road. When you have been operating for 2 years and you want to add a branch location, here's some additional information about your branch. And 2 years is down the road, you potentially forgot about it, so just reach out to your board administrator and they will assist you. Information only. Externship. It is different than a remote. Depends on who, a remote, the teacher is there making sure the instruction is happening and overseeing the instruction. The externship, hey, I go out and I work for the local ABC 27 news station, and I'm under their tutelage. I have a supervisor that is an employee there, so totally different, and nothing that needs to be visited from our end or a fee associated. All right, ownership. Probably best to hang out in here just for a second. So let's go ahead to ownership. So first off, you're going to tell us about the type. Okay. Then you're going to tell us the exact name of the business. I'm doing this on purpose. If you were paying attention, if I were a person, this would be totally different. If you were paying attention, you would know potentially that is not the name that I have placed on the other tab, but I'm doing this on purpose. Trust me. Evidence of business registration. So again, copy, paste, and actually that really shouldn't be copy and paste. This should be embed your certificate of incorporation, partnership agreement, or registration of foreign corporation. Okay. Leave blank only if the business is a sole proprietorship. Is it a franchise? Yes or no? If yes, where's the agreement? All right, so personal data. Complete the following for the sole proprietor, partner, or corporate president. Personal data number 1 must be completed for every application. You're like, who in the world do we put in here? Well, again, this is going to be your owners. So if it's just one, hey, easy breezy, I just have one person to worry about. If it's a partner or partners, perfect. I've got 3 partners. We're all going in this together. I've got the first one and the second one and then the third one, and you'll see that they're numbered. If it is a corporation and they're truly going to own the school, then at that point you're going to need to identify your structure, your ownership structure, your organizational structure within that corporation. And that kind of goes down a different path in terms of percent of ownership. So if that is kind of fitting to your situation, send me an email and let's start talking about it sooner than later. Okay. The reason being is you're going to fill out the information pertinent about that person. And then you need to make sure that you are getting your clearances done, your credit checks done, and possible personal financial statements. And hold on to that thought here in a minute. So remember, I told you the board is all about ensuring student protection. If your school is not financially solvent, financially stable, it is going to be very difficult to get a license approval. Remember I said I had 15 years at another private license school? Yeah, well, we celebrated our 100-year anniversary in May and abruptly closed their doors in December of the exact same year. The financial stability of the corporation tanked. And in so, we lost accreditation, we lost the ability to offer Title IV, blah, 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 blah. We're trying to prevent that from happening before it potentially even starts. So we'd gone 100 years. We had several changes of ownership. So there are measures that we have internally in terms of monitoring, heightened cash monitoring and watching those things. But right out the gate, you really need to show the financial solvency of the ownership coming into this. So again, if it's a corporation, an existing corporation, like long-standing corporation, that's when we definitely want to start talking about who, in terms of ownership, percentages, so on and so forth, who you're going to identify. If it's a brand new corporation that you're just starting just to maybe get the school running, then personal financial statements of each owner will be required. Because that corporation hasn't really established themselves just yet. So this, again, is a tricky topic. So we definitely need to have those open lines of communication about this topic, especially once you guys are hitting the ground running. But again, you're going to just complete all of the information relevant to each person identified. And again, just reading the question, answering, and providing the information. You're going to see here the FBI clearance, the state clearance, as well as your credit report. Please understand this is not a credit score. This isn't your Experian, or is that even one? I don't even know. Like your 650, your 720, your 830, that's not a score. We want the entire report. Who completed the information about this person, and then you're going to do the same for the additional identifiable individuals. We give you 4. Okay, end of tab. So let's go back in here. So again, your personal data is required depending on in terms of how your structure is and how you would list. Here are the links to get your clearances done. For the credit report, yeah, we don't care who you go with. Like, I know there are multiple avenues. There isn't a preferred provider. What I can tell you is it doesn't have to be a hard pull. It can be a soft pull, so it does not impact your credit score. But this needs to be a report with the full history. Okay. But when you're in, and again, we're talking about the distinction, like if it's a partner. So if your ownership, again, is 3 guys. We just had a change of ownership last board meeting. There were 3 guys that bought the school from another one gentleman. Each individual had to provide the background clearances, the credit report, and they had to provide their audited financials. Now keep in mind, audited is one thing, more common for corporations. So if you don't have audited personal financial statements, you have the ability to do maybe a reviewed or a compiled, as long as it is done by a third party, by an accountant. Okay, that's why very early on we suggested you find accountants. So again, I'm not going to shortchange this conversation. I don't want to, but this is definitely unique to each person, to each application. So again, let's get those lines of communication open so that you can ensure you have all of the information you need to on your end to put into the application to make it complete. All right, so in the application then, we're going to go to school names. And what? I've got something red. Your school name differs. Remember, I told you I did that on purpose. Remember, shaded boxes. Well, first of all, it's not shaded, so you can't edit it. Second of all, even if I clicked on it. So this information auto-populated clearly. So I need to go back and figure out, which one is my exact school name? What is the name that I want on my license? Is it ABC Mouse or is it Mickey Mouse? And then if by chance, this is going to be the school name, but this is the exact, however, you need to make sure that you register the fictitious name. So then you need to provide that documentation here in the application. An example of this is I had a school maybe a year ago, New Village Institute of Blairsville. So they came in, that's what their school name is, but they're like, you know what? We want to advertise, we want to promote it as NVI. Okay, perfect. It's a fictitious name. It's an alternate name. So you need to register that alternate name and you need to provide evidence that you have done so. So that's kind of the concept behind this. Okay, so they ended up coming back and they wanted like 3 additional alternate names. So again, you provide evidence for all of those. So surety. This is where I showed you on the website and I said we're going to come back to it and we're going to talk about this in terms of that remote location as well. So surety is insurance. It's in case something happens. And in this case, it's in case you close. Yes, I know we're just talking about the happy times if you opening a school and now I'm turning around and I'm telling you, hey, you need to consider this if you close. I get it. But I know, I gave you my example, right? 100 years. So with surety, it is insurance. It is in case you close. To do what? Guess what? Protect the student who has prepaid their tuition for your program. So your policy is, I'm going to enroll you into my medical assistant diploma program that is 990 hours long and costs you $10,000. And you're going to require that $10,000 to be paid up front before you even begin class. Some of you are like, what? That's okay. It's an acceptable practice. We do not have regulation that tells you you can't do that. So some of our schools do that. So in that scenario, so it's 990 hours, and let's say it takes 9 months to do those 990 hours. So let's just make it easier because math, so I can't do math on the fly nor come up with school names. So let's say it's 10 months long, it's $10,000, and they pay you all up front. So at month 5, the school's like, you know what, we can't do this. We don't have enough money to pay our teachers. We can't do this. We're closing our doors. Oh, nice. So you just took $10,000 of my money and only gave me $5,000 worth of instruction. What am I? I'm out $5,000. Nope. That's why we have surety. Surety is in case you close to protect the student to be able to make a claim against that insurance bond, that insurance provider policy, to, get back that unearned, prepaid tuition. Okay? So now that you have that understanding, lots of red stuff here. This is absolutely positively required, kind of like that certificate of occupancy. No wiggle room on that. It is absolutely required before it would go before the board. So on our website, please note, still in this same area. Okay? Scroll down a little bit. So, okay, hold on. There are a couple options for you to get surety. Okay, so the most common is the bond, and that's what I'm going to show you on our website. Another option is what we call PTAF, where you can see there the Pennsylvania Training Assurance Fund, or an irrevocable administrative trust. So that's where your attorney comes into play. Not that you haven't used them already, because you're going to be designing policies and procedures, but your attorney will come into play on that because, again, they will be involved along with your accountant to make sure those funds are set aside. I have personally never seen this However, it is still a viable option for you. PTAF is common, but not as common as the surety bond. Okay, so let's take a look at the bond itself from our website. So first thing, click on the link. Notice it is a fillable PDF, so I would encourage you to download it once you have it open, download it and save it, and then provide this to the provider that you're getting the bond from. And you're like, well, who do I go to? Really, anybody. I've seen Erie, I've seen Western, I've seen Travelers, truly anybody. And you're like, well, how are they going to know how to fill this out? Well, after you download that form, this is the one pet peeve we have about our website. It doesn't take you back where you were. You're also going to download the instructions. And you're going to give these to your agent. And look, we've even numbered each blank and the corresponding information that goes into them up above. For some reason, this piece is always forgotten. So if you're going to go the bond route, make sure you get the bond form and you get the directions. So in speaking of this, let's look at the form itself again. So again, this is fillable. This is your applicant name, which should be your school name, doing business as. So this might be the owner. In some of your instances, this might be the owner doing business as, and then the school name. Again, school address, municipality, county, blah, 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 blah. All right, so in the sum of $10,000 is the magical number. Regulation will tell you required for school startup is $10,000 of coverage. It's not going to cost you $10,000. That's the level of the policy. Okay, so that's your level of insurance. So you're going to keep on going on, and your agent's going to fill this out. Agent will put all the dates in. So name of applicant again is, owner, possibly doing business as, school name. Okay, so that information should match up above. Since I'm over here on the right-hand side, let's keep going down the right-hand side. You need to make sure that there is a wet signature here, meaning physical signature, pen to paper, blue or black ink, signature. Notice, we also need to affix a title. The title should be either owner, president, vice president, or partner. It should be one that is provided here for you. You must have two signatures on this side. So you have one wet signature here, the second wet signature here, along with the corresponding title, either secretary, treasurer, or partner. It could be the same person. Maybe the same person because it's a sole proprietor. That's fine. But you have to sign twice. You would just sign as the president, and then you would sign as the treasurer. If there are three of you that own it, then you have 1, 2, 3, all partners. Okay? Keeping on the right side. Surety seal. This part down here is done by the attorney in fact. This is done by the actual agent. Okay? You, them. To the left. Attach a corporate seal and witness. So the witness needs to sign. This could be the spouse of somebody. This could be another person at the agency. This really truly there's no true specific person. But the corporate seal is absolutely required. So when you take a look at the PowerPoint, it will tell you that a school seal should be an embossing seal with at minimum the school's name. Okay? Embossing. You take the piece of paper and you put it between the little clamp and you squeeze, and then it has a raised seal. That's what you're looking for. Staples, Office Max, Amazon, whatever. Nothing expensive. I think they're like $10, depends on how fancy you get. And this isn't a once and done use. Some of the schools say, why am I buying this? Well, you can also use this on your students' transcripts. We'll talk about them later. But to make that transcript for the student official, once they've graduated, you can use your school seal, emboss it, and then you sign it as the school director. So it's not a once and done. In fact, somebody stole mine out of my desk the one time. I'm like, well, why really do you want that school seal? But no, I digress. It's not getting you anywhere. What you want to do is email your board administrator. Now, you might actually get this before you even submit. So email it to me. Say, hey, Jenny, take a look at this. This is one thing I can look at in full because I will be able to take a look at the form, make sure all of the information is completed. It's for $10,000, that all of the signatures and titles are present, that this signature and the seal from the provider is present, and your witness and that seal as well. So again, this is one thing I will look at in full. So just email it to me and say, hey, take a look. Because what it will tell you, let me get out of that. What it will tell you in the application is the original is kept in our offices. So in the event that you close, we then contact the bond provider and say, hey, just to let you know, they closed. Students might pursue, a claim against the bond. So where do you mail it? Address is here. And again, all you're doing is providing a copy of the bond here. And you're like, okay, that's great. That's for the school. Yes, it is. Well, you said our remote has to be covered as well. Yes, I did. So all you have to do is your provider. Oh, let me go back into this. So it will tell you on the surety bond, well, really in the directions, it will tell you that there are 2 pages. And you're like, well, I only looked at 1 page. You're right. Your provider will also provide for you this certificate of power of attorney. It's an automatic paper. It's an automatic form. It's an automatic document that gets done when you have them do your bond. So all you need to do is give them these directions and the form, and then they will take care of the rest in terms of getting you the power of attorney. The bond writer, they will also provide to you if you have additional addresses to be covered under this bond. So they will give you this bond completed, and you're going to show it to me, and I'm going to be like, yep, that's perfect. And then they will have an additional write-up that will say bond number XYZ1234 also covers not only the school address, but it also covers the remote location located at 5650 Dairy Street, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, 17111, whatever that address is. Okay. So in theory, then, if you have a remote, you're actually going to have this form, the bond itself, the power of attorney, and a rider. So you, in your application, would actually embed all 3 documents. Ideally, it's just one document. You've scanned them all together and you've put them in here. Or you can put each individual document. That's fine. Whatever you're most comfortable with. But again, the original must be in our office. All right, so that's the bond. All right, now we come to the pro forma. So these are instructions, and you want leisure reading. Oh, by the way, remember, end of tab. I'm good. That's all that's on there. Okay. Same thing with the school names. Once you've done all your fictitious names. So your pro forma instructions. So it's really truly that. It's instructions. It's instructions on how to complete the business plan tab, the pro forma tab, and the 2006 tab. And you're like, oh, yeah, I told you. There's a lot of emphasis put on the financial solvency of the proposed new school. So read through these. I know you're like, yeah, right. But no, seriously, they will come in handy. So this is a very long document, but this document is actually broken up to say, here's guidance for the business plan and the different sections. Like, oh, I have a question about this section. Oh, well, let me go see what the instructions tell me. Okay. It will do the same thing. Keep scrolling. Dory said keep swimming. I say keep scrolling. And then it will also do the same thing for the P&L tab, which is right here. So again, it will go through each section. And then there'll be some guidance on the 2006. However, you're like, yeah, right, that's no guidance. Yeah, it is a little bit more scant. I don't know if I said that right. However, you were given PDE 2006 instructions. So you do have that as an additional attachment to the invite. So between that document and this tab, you should be good to go. I know, you're like, you're right, Jenny, I gotcha. Truly, your business plan, answer the questions accordingly. I mean, I don't want to, rush it. I don't want to, belittle you, but truly, if you have questions when you approach that section, please ask. I am going to focus on just a few areas that trip some of the schools up. So again, believe it or not, the very first one is here. So anticipated start date of first class. Please do not make this any date prior to the board meeting that you are trying to get on. What does that mean? Okay, so June 3rd. Clearly, you're not making the deadline this Friday. If you do, I'm extremely impressed. However, it could be done if you started this process on your own. But let's say June 3rd is the submission deadline for the August 18th board meeting. So this date should not be before August 18th. In fact, I would probably even put it out into September or October in case you're deferred, in case you're approved pending. You also need time to ramp up and start advertising, recruiting, and enrolling. You're not going to start the day after you get approved. So be realistic with that. However, do not make it before the board meeting date. All right, so how many programs? Well, obviously because it's how many new program applications you're submitting. But I do want to make sure that you are extremely cautious. You are extremely consistent, accurate, spelling, grammar. They cause the board reviewer a lot of heartburn when there's many spelling typos throughout the application. However you entitle your program here needs to be how you entitle the program in the new program application, in the enrollment agreement, in the catalog. Consistency, accuracy is key. Okay? How long is your program? All of this information is going to be in the new program application as well. So it needs to tie, it needs to relate, it needs to match. Gross tuition only. Sure, could be. It could be an all-inclusive tuition, meaning it also includes your books, it includes your uniform, it includes your tools, it includes your certification tests, it includes technology fees and graduation fees. I don't know, but you do. You're going to develop this, you're going to design it. If it's only tuition, then it's only tuition. But you need to be very clear within your policies, within your communications, so on and so forth, what the cost of the program is going to be. Okay? How many students, how many times per year are you going to run the program? In my case, it was 10-month program. I have the option to start it every month. Maybe I want to start it every 2 months. Maybe once a year. However you decide, it's your design, it's your school, it's your business. It's up to you. Any future plans? Tell us about the program. The property. Tell us about your staff. How many are you going to need? What about your capital? Ownership structure. Other business. Is your school going to have other income? So for my CDL schools, are you going to be doing refresher programs that don't need to follow through with your school? There's just like, hey, I've been driving for about 15 years, but I had to take off the last 2 years because of an injury. I want to come back out and I want to do testing. That's fine. So is there other business? My dog grooming schools, they have a school and then they actually have a salon. The salon gives them other income. You have any affiliations? Are you going to do any type of accreditation? Tell us about your marketing plan. Tell us about your student funding. How are they going to afford and pay for your program? I'm going to specify this. Accreditation is not in your immediate radar. I'm not saying it can't be, but it is very unlikely now. You cannot get Title IV funding, which is financial aid, unless you are accredited. So again, this likely is a no for right now. So then you must answer, how am I going to pay for this? Refund policy. This couldn't have been done any easier for you. Please note the comment here. 73.134. You're like, what is that? That's a regulation. Where do I find that? You have the handout. You have the actual regulations in the invites, as well as where it's on our website. Copy and paste that bad boy right from that document and put it in there, because it's already done for you. The key to that is, though, that you want to make sure you're choosing the right version of the refund policy. And you're like, version? Yeah, so there's a version for programs that are longer than 6 weeks long, a version for programs that are shorter than 6 weeks long, and a version for programs that are 100% online or offered through distance ed. Okay, so make sure you're choosing the one that is applicable. Now, you're like, okay, there's a catch to this. No, truly, there's not a catch to it. It is simply that simple. Just go out and copy and paste it and make sure you read it in its entirety to make sure you know what applies to you and what doesn't apply to you. Your board administrator will kind of guide you and say if you're on the wrong path or if you need to add more. They'll tell you that. But when you're looking at the refund policy, truly it encompasses, I don't have it in here. Look, I'm going to pull open my regulations. I have these earmarked. So refunds. So write this down. Oh, you know what? I think it's in the notes of this. So the refund policy truly itself does start at 73.132 and goes through 73.136. So even though the application points you to the 134, the 0.134, that's to get you which version, but there's truly more to it. So please just make sure that you're looking for that. Again, I think the notes tells you which the full policy itself. But anyway, so you're just kind of working through this. Notice the title that I put up above falls in down below. I didn't put a tuition in, but if I did, it would have populated here. We talked about fees. So if you're not going to have your tuition like a one-stop shop, all-encompassing fee, total, that's fine. But then you need to detail out and explain what your fees are. You need to do the research about your program. If I come out of your program with a diploma in medical assistant, what am I expecting to make? And how does that compare to my loans? And you're like, what are you talking about? Colleges don't do this. No, you're absolutely right. They don't. However, remember that bad reputation we have? It's called gainful employment. It's the Attorney General, Office of Attorney General, has been doing a lot of digging, a lot of research. That students who go to our types of schools come out with all of this debt and they're not able to find a job that will, kind of correlate with the salary versus their loans. So again, just the information, do the due diligence, understand when you are going to price your program, understand and ensure that your student is not going to be heavily burdened with a lot of debt once they complete. We talked about those affiliations, the accounting principles. That's on the screen. We're going to jump there in a minute. Answer all of the appropriate questions. Who completed the form? Make sure end of form, go to the very end. Okay. So let's take a look back in our slideshow. So one of the things that the board is going to look for, and specifically the Financial Review Committee, who will really extract the tabs dedicated to finances. Your finances will not be discussed before the entire board and before all of the other schools. It is kept private. The board meeting itself will truly only focus on the school in terms of where it's at, program it's going to offer, policies, procedures, and curriculum. The financial component will never be discussed in front of everybody. It is a separate meeting. And if they have additional questions from you, of you, and want additional documents from you, that will be communicated to you. But what they are looking for, again, is that financial solvency, that you show the ability to stand, not counting on the tuition. Tuition is just a benefit, right? So you can pay all of your startup costs and sustain yourself for expenses for 4 months without needing to rely on your tuition. So that's what they're looking for from the documents that we've discussed. That's what they're looking for from within these various tabs. So the general accepted accounting principles, the GAAP, that is what they use. That's the method that the Financial Review Committee is looking for. You're accounting for the expense at the time. So the best way that I can always come up with this is car insurance. Let's say it's $1,200 a year for your car insurance, which then breaks it out to $100 a month. So you might pay it all in January when the policy renews, but truly in your budget, you're going to account for it $100 for each month. So that's the premise, that's the concept behind GAAP and what the Financial Review Committee is looking for. Again, we're not accountants. Please make sure you consult with one to assist you with this process. So the profit and loss statement, so when we're on that tab, you're going to be as accurate. You're right. But also budgeting, forecasting, projecting at the same time. You're like, what are you talking about? So there are elements of this tab that are actual. You're like, you're right. What's that? All the pre-startup stuff. All of your pre-startup expenses are actual. You will also kind of have an idea, potentially, of what your actual expenses are going to be going forward once you start operating the school, okay? The projection side comes from truly how many students are you going to start? How many students will actually graduate? How many are going to drop? Please do understand that just because you started them doesn't mean they're going to finish with you. Truly. Especially once you get into, I'm not even going there. We had, 15 years, you see your school hoppers. They go from one school to the next. They don't like it there, or they got a failing grade and they're like, I'm not going back. Let me try this school and let me see what I can do there. And some will hop, especially if you do offer financial aid. There are some known to hop to maximize their financial aid and get their cost of living expenses. And that's kind of how they fund their life. Neither here nor there. I'm telling you, your students do know the tricks of the trade from time to time. So just because they enroll with you, please, it doesn't mean that they're going to finish with you. So please make sure you are being realistic with your numbers. So if you say on your business plan, and I'm not there, but somewhere back here, you told us how many students, right? So here you're going to account for them. So if I said 10, I'm putting in 10. Depending on how long your program is, they might not drop right away. They might drop after a month or two. Depending on how long your program is, well, I can also guarantee you're never going to have re-enters. Somebody who dropped your program and then decided to come back, you're not going to have drop or re-enters in your first month. It's just not going to happen. And then you're likely not going to have any graduates, again, depending on how long your program is. So in this case, I started 10 and I didn't lose anybody and everybody's continuing forward. But I start every 3 months. So here's my start. So these 10 continue forward, right? But now is where I'm going to have no starts because I start every 3 months. But now I had somebody drop out because something happened and they just couldn't continue. I didn't have any re-enters and I didn't have any grads. Why? It's a 3-month-long program. Again, all of this should be, it's a projection, but it should be an accurate according to how long your plan, how long your program is, how many starts you have, so on and so forth. So then I come to month 1, 2, 3. I start every 3. So I'm starting here again and I'm bringing in 10 more. And I'm not going to have anybody drop this start. I didn't have that one person come back, but I did graduate the 9 that continued because they're done. Okay, so you're going to keep finishing, filling this out accordingly. And then, my tuition is $10,000. So remember, though, it's a 10-month program, and I account for it at, by month. So I have 10 students, 10 grand, but it's $1,000 per, so this is still $10,000 in tuition. And then what are my fees for those 10 students? So accountants, you can kind of see very quickly how this will become cumbersome. You're going to roll through it. You're going to keep on keeping on. Remember, keep scrolling. This will automatically tabulate, calculate, whatever you want to say, and then end of tab. Okay? So, again, accurate and realistic. First 18 months of operation. Don't underestimate your expenses. I just had somebody submit an application in their distance ed, but they put no distance ed expenses. Like, what are your internet charges? Advertising, how much is it going for you to advertise? So you need to make sure that you're realistic. Again, some of it is truly accurate because the expense has happened, and then you also know what your monthly bill is going forward. Again, please don't think because you're not showing profit immediately that you would not be approved. That is not their goal. Their goal, in terms of when I say they, the financial review committee, they want to see that each month, each year, each 6 months, you're gaining, you're building, and you're just improving. Okay? So the 2006 is the next tab of the application. Now, this one is, I would say, sometimes hard to explain, so I really need you to focus here. So, previous fiscal year, blank. You will not complete this right column. Okay. Prior to, leading into your submission. So if you are submitting Friday, hey, guess what I'm giving you? December, January, February information. Theoretically, it's not like a quarter on a calendar. I get it, but you need to show that time leading in. So at least 3-4 months prior. If you want to go back November, you want to go back further to October, that's fine. But you're only going to provide the information for the immediate 3 to 4 months prior to your submission. So if I'm submitting June, now you're really going to have to make me figure out the calendar. April, May, what is it? March, April, May. Okay. Educational revenue, gross tuition. You don't have any. You're not operating. You have no gross tuition coming in. So this is blank. However, you might have some educational expenses. So account for them here. So whatever is relevant for this time period leading up to your submission of application, fill it in and make sure it's accurate. So it cannot all be zeros. So when you're looking at this, this slide, it's like, well, it can't all be zeros. However, there are some sections that will be zeros, and that's understood. Complete all the sections applicable and make sure that it's actual and real information. Okay, so as you kind of scroll through again, read it, fill it in if it's applicable. You're ideally not going to have any error messages. There's a possibility that you will, just because you're not filling in the prior information to compare it to. So your board administrator will take a look at it and advise you accordingly. And then you want to make sure that you're doing the disclosure information and you're accounting for any negative information. This section 3 will not be completed. It's not applicable to you. You are not currently running any programs. Scroll, fill out who filled out the form, end of tab. Well, that was actually missing end of tab, but that is the end of tab. Okay. All right, so the 2006 is a form that you're going to become very familiar with. Once you are approved licensure, you are automatically put on what we call quarterly reporting. It is not a punishment. It's just an automatic procedure to ensure, again, financial solvency, continued growth, continued stability for the school. Okay, so here you will find the good rule of thumb in terms of when that would be submitted. But if we go to our website, that information has also been added here. So in the quarterly financial reporting, the deadlines, and then the forms, once you click there and you go there, you will also find the forms there as well. We do have a, kind of mentioned the Financial Review Committee. It's a subset of the full board. Miss Felix, I've mentioned her before. She is the staff member to the Financial Review Committee. So she may or may not reach out to you directly. We're trying to streamline some processes, but I still want you to have her information, even though until you submit, I'm your go-to girl, okay? So if I need to rope her in, schedule her into a conversation or a call with us, I will do that. Truly, it's informational for you to have her information because she could potentially reach out to you directly on behalf of the Financial Review Committee, okay? Audited financials, again, we kind of already talked about this. In terms of your structure. So all applicant schools must demonstrate the financial solvency. If you're probably tired of hearing that. So if the school is a single owner or a partnership, the application needs to include the personal financial statements of each owner. Okay. I already kind of talked about this. And that's what I said, open the lines of communication. Let's start hammering this out now so that you know exactly what you need to provide. But as a person, individual, you likely aren't just going to the CPA to go get your finances audited. But what you could do is go to them and do a compiled or reviewed. There is a price difference on those as well. Just kind of giving you a heads up. Again, if it's a corporation, it's long-standing. They likely have done their audited financials, so you just provide the most recent. If it's a new corporation, what you're going to do then is do the audited, compiled, or reviewed for the individual owners of that new corporation. And again, definitely a case-by-case scenario. But that's what you're looking at in terms of providing. So when you're in the application, again, you just see a text box there to embed. Capital, where's your money? Money. So with your money, what they're looking for is a bank statement that is in the school's name. It's been established and set up in the school's name. To show that cash, to show that capital, Okay, you want to be able to show 4 months of operating costs and any pre-startup costs to be able to show that. As a sole proprietor, maybe what you want to do is have the bank statement in the school's name. If you're going to be the primary funder, we had a school we had somebody do this. He just took the money out of his account and then started the school account with it. And then he showed his bank statement of the debit and the school bank statement with the credit, again, showing and aligning where all of that money came from. You do have some options in terms of it can be a line of credit, whatever it is. One thing I do want to warn you about is please don't account for life insurance as an asset or part of, your finances, because most are, I know there's a difference, term and whole. I think it's, one of them only pays out if you die. And that's not immediate, access to capital. So just please make sure that when you're working with whomever you're working with to prepare this information, life insurance is most likely not going to be provided as support or evidence. Your ethics statement is just you attesting to you're going to run an ethical school. And we have the link right there in the application for you, but it's also here in that same location. We ask that you print this and you sign it, wet signature. So before you print it, go ahead and type everything in, but do please print it and then do a wet signature and then embed into the application. Okay, so that's all that tab is. Repository. So you are required to have a records repository. So a records repository is required through regulation. It is a statement that's, pretty much says if you close, you're going to send your student records to another private licensed school in the state of Pennsylvania so that students can access them after you have closed. Okay, so that's the gist of it. So an example is this, okay? And you're like, wait a minute, Jenny, you just said it has to be with another private licensed school. I did. However, we are working on a central repository. We truly are hoping to have this in place by the June submission deadline. I know it seems like every time I do this, I keep pushing it out. There are some kinks that we're still trying to work out to be able to make it available to new schools. So really, it's probably best just to plan on getting another private licensed school in the state of Pennsylvania to be your repository. I've always told, these last few sessions, just approach it with, hey, can you be my temporary just for me to get licensure? And then once the central repository is open, then I'm going to go there. Just kind of maybe coax them a little bit. They had to do the same thing, and they still have to do the same thing because your records repository is forever. It's until you close. So it has to be in effect because if you would close, that student needs to be able to get their transcript if they need it for further education or employment. All right, Jenny, how do I figure out who to contact? Yeah, that's what this slide is. Use our website. Use Edna. We call her Edna. So when you're on Edna, follow these steps and you'll be able to get the entire listing of private licensed schools in the state of Pennsylvania. Okay. So you can narrow it by just kind of looking close by, or you can just look at the entire state and leave that information blank. Now, the regulation will tell you that it should be in your area, but my school repository was across the state, 4 hours away. So it is what it is. It's what you can come up with. So really, truly, it's kind of look at the entire state and see what you can do. Yeah, it means calling. It means asking, emailing. But when you're on this website and it gives you the list of all the schools, it gives you the school director, the address, the contact, phone number, blah, blah, blah. So use that resource. And again, this is what it should look like. This is the statement that you need. So retype this from this slide and then create it. So these are informational for you, but they are important. Because remember, I talked about that school seal, and it's not a waste of money. You're going to use it. Well, you're going to use it on the transcript. But my encouragement and my advice is to whoever works for you and or enrolls with your school should have a file. And the reason why I say that is every school needs to do a compliance audit every 3 years or 5 years. 5 years only if they're accredited. So for you, every 3 years. During that compliance audit, we're going to look at your faculty files, we're going to look at your director, acting director files, and we're going to look at your student files. Okay, so anybody that works for you or is enrolled with your school needs to have a file. So you're going to need to figure out that system. So your current students, this is the information that should be in their file. Once they transition to a graduate, truly the only thing you need is their last and final transcript, but it is also nice from time to time to have a copy of their award as well. You wouldn't believe how many people have lost them, whether because they moved or a tragedy of some sort. So it is nice to have. It's not required though. But maybe that current student dropped and they're withdrawing and they're not coming back. This is the information you need to have in that file. So your file, your student file has a life cycle. Current to active, potentially, or current to graduate is ideal, but it might be current to withdrawal, and then it might be from withdrawal back to current, and then finally graduate. So there are different life cycles. You need to make sure that anytime, if they do start and drop and then come back and then drop again, you need to make sure each time you have that new enrollment agreement, you have all of that information. The transcript itself must contain these 7 components that you see on your screen. And again, name, title, school official, signature is not required, surprisingly. However, it is strongly encouraged that that is on your transcript. And again, then that you have the ability to put the school seal on it. And then that way it's a wet signature, it's dated, and it has that school seal just to add to that officialness, so to speak. Okay? So again, informational to support what records we're talking about, okay? We talked about the director briefly before, but there's an entire tab now dedicated to your